episode with Suki. We're really happy that you're here today. Originally, you are from Chennai, a metro city in South India. You came here in 2013 with a bachelor degree in biotechnology, did your master's in Munich in biomedicine and nutrition, and you also hold a doctor. We will really dive into that PhD. Thank you for being here. To give a start, smooth one, we are wondering if you would describe your journey here in Germany with 3 words. Which ones would that be?
I'd say it's been exciting, adventurous, and challenging.
Okay, so let's see how we can match those 3 words to your journey in Germany.
Okay, so Dr. Suki, if I'm going to call you that, you're still a doctor. So what was your main purpose coming here? Was it purely academic or you had other motion?
One of the first reasons was to pursue my education further. So it was academics, and also it was just a fun experiment that my dad wanted to try. So the Goethe Institute would advertise weekly in the newspapers back then that, you could learn German, and it just started off as like one of these weekend projects, and then eventually got to know about the education system in Germany, and also volunteered for I volunteered at an event that that sort of was a tie-up between the Indian and the German government, and we had like a lot of tents where they sort of introduced us to the different cultural aspects and the different educational aspects of what Germany had to offer. Like there was Bosch, and there was Siemens, and all the different universities in Germany. That sort of it was also, of course, with it was also organized by the Goethe Institute.
Yeah, but did you actually do a lot of research on your own? Or
yes, I did. So, of course, the starting point was also this DAAD. So back then, the Indian-German relations had just started around 2010, 2011. And then I had to do the research all by myself as to what were the different universities. And, of course, learning German back at home also helped because you could get quite a lot of information at the Goethe Institute.
At what level did you learn German in back home?
So at back home, I'd started in the 3rd year of my university. So I did finish B2.
Ooh. You had a certificate?
Yes.
Ah, interesting. So,
yes.
but your studies here was not in German?
No, it was in English, the medium of education. At least like the master's program that I studied was in English. But I did pick up, I must be honest, that I did learn quite a bit of German back at home, but I really did pick up the language only after having moved here.
And how many years did it take you to pick it up?
I'd say 3 years, like a good 3 years after having moved here. So I'd say I really started speaking German in Bonn. Munich was quite international, I would say. So of course, in the supermarkets, it was not a problem because I already knew, what the little words were, and I could still communicate at the counters and whatnot. This was not an issue. And of course, my class was quite international. The majority was German, but I was also the only Indian. So so where I did have the chance to communicate with the Germans, it was like it started with small talks. And then eventually in Bonn, when I moved to Bonn, so at least in my work environment, I had to start speaking in German, at least like to communicate with the technicians that were working in the lab.
So how did you pick the cities where you actually studied and did your PhD?
So Munich was just a chance. So I must really acknowledge a friend of mine who I had no idea that this course was offered at the Technical University, and a friend of mine who also studied German with me told me, hey, why don't you try also applying to this course? And I went ahead with my applications, and this was actually one of the first universities that I got through. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, okay, Munich, and I had 2 other friends who lived here as well, and one who's a very good friend of mine. And then I thought, okay, I knew at least a couple of people if I were to move to Munich. And I'll be honest, apart from Berlin and Munich, I wasn't aware of all the other cities. Of course, you learn about the little snippets, and I did learn about the different cities and during my classes. Mm-hmm. But, Munich and Berlin always stood out because that's what you hear in the news, right? Like Hamburg, okay, perhaps Bremen because of the port. But there was a lot of awareness about Munich and Berlin, and I'm actually quite glad that Munich was my starting point. Mm-hmm. And what made me move to Bonn? So while I was doing my master's, I already I tried like a little experiment for myself.
What kind of experiment?
So I worked at different labs because that's what you do as a researcher. And then I sort of navigated my way through which was my favorite subject.
Okay.
And then I sort of understood what my comfort zone was and what I understood the best. And I decided that if I were to do a PhD, it would have to be in something that I was passionate about. And the subject that I did pursue my PhD is adipose tissue research. And while I was working at a lab in Munich, my mentor back then met my doctor father at a conference, and then he said that, hey, you know what, if you really want to do this, you might have to leave Munich because I don't have funding at this point, but this person in Bonn has the funding.
Sounds like
So
it's really based on personal relationships. So you had a mentor, and your mentor had someone who would become your...
Yes, because with him, so he was one of the group leaders at one of the labs I was working at, and I did tell him how important it was for me to do this or pursue my education further in this particular field of research. So that was quite important. So it was just by a chance that he happened to meet my doctor father, and he said that, okay, why don't you take this opportunity? There's funding available, and why don't you do this? And that was my starting point.
So how did the application process then work from having your master degrees to the...
This one was purely based on recommendation.
Okay.
And I had to send in my application to the place in Bonn. And then, of course, they looked through my documents. I was then invited for a presentation. And I had the usual interview process, and they asked me questions, and they tested my knowledge on what I had known already in terms of, my methods and what I'd already done in my master's, and they saw if it was a good fit. And based on that, and of course, my doctor father made sure that he did ask his questions. He asked my mentor back then about how I would work, and I think it just happened that way.
And did you have a good idea who you would work with in the next years? Because you just said like your doctor father make sure to ask your mentor, but did you also have the chance to figure out about this person?
No, and I think that's one of my biggest learnings. Back then, of course, in the first go, I didn't know that my doctor father was quite well known in the field, and he was also doing a research on so this particular program in Bonn, apart from my research interest, also was offering this. It sort of opened my doors to pharmacology. This was completely new. So this is in addition to what I wanted to do, I knew I was going to learn something new if I were to work with the professor in Bonn. Yes, this 6 years or 7 years ago, perhaps my outlook or how I would have approached the situation was completely different. But the team, when I met all the team members, they were very kind. And at that point, I would say that I perhaps would not even have known what were the right questions to be asked, right? And at that first impression I got, they were quite welcoming. In fact, like the team members were very welcoming. In fact, the day I had the interview, they had also taken me out for a good dinner, and I got to know the team briefly, and they all seemed quite friendly.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, why not? I mean, let's make the transition and see what happens. But what I did not ask at that point was, how is my professor as a person, or how does a dynamic in the team work? So this is something I did not do back then. But in retrospect, like my at that point, like 7 years ago, what I thought was, okay, I was lucky enough to get a subject I was so passionate and interested about, and of course the whole aspect of, okay, I have no clue about what pharmacology is, and it was going to open like this door of opportunities. Yep. And I thought, why not?
Okay, but going back, like you said, you were the only Indian in your class during your masters,
right?
But I know there's this hooding flow of Indians coming to Germany to study. While studying, I heard a lot. So is it that Indians don't do this course, or what?
So my course was relatively new. So it was the first. So when I did the course, it was the first batch to be to open its doors to international people. Before that, the course was offered only in German. So it was the first intake. So I'm guessing at that point nobody was even aware of this, because so yes, you're right. There are a lot of Indians that do come to Germany. I mean, even back then, when it was engineering, I mean, Garching and Archistrasse was filled with Indians, especially MSCE, informatics and whatnot. But I studied in a little town called Freising. TUM has its life sciences campus in Freising. And 10 years ago, Freising had 3 Indians tops. So I was one of them. And that's why, and I'm guessing so they wanted to try this experiment and see, okay, if they were going to open this course to international students, what was, they wanted to see how the course would do. And I think I was in fact one of the first few internationals in that course itself.
Then your second year, or when you were done, were there still Indians there?
Oh yes, in fact one of my very good friends from my university from bachelor's, she joined me as well as my junior, and also pursued her master's in the same course.
And like TUM, yeah, I think it's one of the best schools in Germany. That's for sure. How was life there generally? I know it's really strenuous. Like if you're going to compare studying in TUM and back in India, which one was more intense?
Oh, I mean, I think in India, in terms of intensity, I mean, we're comparing different scales altogether, because I think in India, the intensity is very different in comparison to the intensity that you have in Germany. In India, I think your intensity would be based on how much you're scoring, how the teaching system is, your grades. But in Germany, I think this was one of my biggest takeaways, that you were allowed to do what you could choose the topics you wanted to study. If you were passionate about something, you could just go and sit lectures from a completely different course and you could just take the credits. And this for me was extremely interesting. In India, you could not have done this. So this is a privilege that Germany offered, right? Like if you wanted to study something from informatics, and okay, now in retrospect, I would have definitely done that. But the whole idea of Germany offering you that level of independency and, the whole option of sort of choosing, you do what you want to do, you pursue.
How long did it take you to get to that point, to understand that those two systems offer many opportunities for you?
I would say the first 2 semesters.
Okay.
But I did take a few exams from a couple of other courses as well, just to sort of give it a try, as to how, just have a flavor of, how that would work. I quite enjoyed it. I mean, again, so now I do things a little more differently than I did 10 years ago. But that aspect in the whole German education system was brilliant, right? Like you could study what you wanted to, you could do as many internships as you wanted to, and this whole, you could figure out what you wanted to pursue. And my learning was, when you, of course, it's not going to be a bed of roses. You had to, my takeaway was, okay, if you were interested in something and you sort of convinced a mentor or a professor saying that, hey, you know what, I would like to try doing this, and if you hit the right chord with them, they would go up to any heights to help you. This was my takeaway.
Yeah, but while studying, like for your master's, did you actually do any internship, VEC students, and was it in English? Because I know your course is more German, I would say. There are a lot of people like, you need to know German and all, and you you have B2, but I don't know if you were able to really speak and comfortable working.
I must admit that, as I said, in my first 2 years in Munich, I barely spoke German at all, apart from, having these little conversations. I was very intimate. Even though I thought if I would have made the attempt, I could have, but I was just too afraid to. But yes, I did do a lot of different HEVI jobs. So we had like a lot of research. I mean, Munich had a lot of research institutes. So they did offer, and for me particularly coming from India, I didn't have the privilege of, sort of having hands-on experience on in the lab per se. So I knew if I had to pursue or go ahead with my research, I would first have to learn properly how to use a pipette and how the whole system works. So I did go through a series of HEVI jobs at different research institutes, and that was quite international, I would say. And in fact, one of my very first few mentors, she was brilliant. She sort of set the stage for me, saying that, in fact, one of her the first thing she told me when I started was that if you make a mistake, it's fine. Like, even if you're not going to be able to do this experiment properly, you own up to it. It doesn't matter, because you can always keep repeating experiments, but you have to have the courage to say that you made the mistake.
How did you get these mentors? Did you like walk up to them?
As I said, it was I would say that I met some people by chance. So the first TV job I had, she was really nice. So I in fact had the chance to work with them for 7 months, and it was because of her that I sort of got into the master thesis topic, which eventually led to my PhD. So I learned quite a few methods. So again, I think the networking helped a lot. So this research institute, if I might point out, was the Helmholtz Research Institute. They have quite an international crowd. So I worked with people from Italy, from Spain, and in fact there was a scientist also from Portugal. So it was not that it was a German-centered crowd. And in fact, the first mentor I'm talking about, she was a Swiss German. So it was, since the research institute was quite international, the language was never a barrier, and the same also goes for the lab rotations and during my masters. And I must say that even my classmates with whom I had the lab rotations, the pair that I actually had my lab rotations with, they were German, but they were super understanding, because I think they sort of knew that this whole environment was very different for me per se. And they would speak, they would go any lengths to speak in English with me. And if I were comfortable, if once they saw that, okay, I was comfortable, then they'll, start having their conversations with me in German. So I think I just got lucky there, I must say.
Okay. But it also really sounds like you put yourself out there, got the exposure. You mentioned networks that helped you to find the right people. So I hear that you definitely are a person who's outgoing and takes things into your hands. Would you say that is something that's necessary if you move to a different country with the ambition that you have?
Absolutely. And especially when you move to a country like Germany. I mean, this is not our comfort zone at all, right? The first barrier that you already have is the language. And but having said that, I also feel that when you're in Germany, your biggest advantage is that you are going to meet people from so many different European countries that you would never even have dreamt of. If in retrospect, when I think of the map where I come from, and then you come to Germany, and then you meet all of these different people, if you don't I think that was one thing that I learned early on. I mean, as much as I love my country and my fellow Indians, and I also knew that, and especially given the situation that I was one of the only Indians in my class, if I were to, just keep to myself, I would not have enjoyed it as much as I did. I mean, I didn't even know Slovenia on the map back then. I mean, and some of my very good friends do come from Slovenia. So I think putting myself out there and being open was absolutely crucial. It was crucial to have enjoyed Germany as a country. And I think that helped me greatly.
But going back, like, while growing up, did you at any point said, you need to like acquire a PhD? Or at some point it just came?
So while growing up, my ambition was to become a medical doctor.
Oh, still a doctor.
Still got the doctor, yeah.
But I did fall a few marks short to become a medical doctor, and I did have an opportunity to pursue dentistry, which like a lot of people in India do. But I thought to myself, no, maybe I would probably not have enough. I mean, I would not have as much fun as I would pursuing biotechnology. But once I was into biotech, that's what we all realized as a class, like my friends and I, that okay, I mean, if you were to pursue research, India is definitely not the place, because it really doesn't have the hub as yet. Okay, at least 10 years ago, it was more difficult to get into a lab and really...
Right now, is it better in India?
I'm guessing it is better. I feel there are more opportunities outside India in terms of, pursuing a career in life sciences than in India itself per se.
Yeah, because I have this notion on Germany where when you're actually done with your master's and getting a job, it's really difficult. So a lot of people switch to, okay, let me get a PhD.
Yes, so as I said, after my master's, again, since it was a life sciences, so even after the master's, landing a job in the industry would have really been, it was difficult at the time I was transitioning. And then I thought to myself that, okay, I've already taken this path, like, I've already immersed myself in research. Why not do a PhD? So that, and I also, as I said, at that point, my only goal was, okay, I already found something that I really liked. And that was at that point was adipose tissue, and then I thought, okay, no, let's just go ahead somehow getting the. I wanted to do a PhD in it, in this subject.
Okay, but during your PhD, were you the only woman of color there?
Yes.
Oh, how did you cope?
I mean, of course, there were other. I mean, there were other Europeans. So I mean, there were internationals, and eventually also another fellow Indian joined the team. Yes, it was difficult in the beginning, especially, and also quite intimidating because as a part of the whole PhD program, we also had to teach. So the teaching part was very challenging because then I'm the only person of color and I'm standing in front of native, Germans, and I had to teach in this language that I'm not even fluent in.
So what did you learn about yourself in this situation?
That I was willing. What I learned about myself was I was willing to learn. I also learned that, this was the only way for me to get over my stage fright and make all those mistakes back then. And today, like if when I think about those classes I would have taught 6 years ago, I think those students would have really asked themselves, oh my God, we're not able to, and I would very unapologetically switch as well. The minute I'd feel that, okay, I don't remember this sentence in German, I'll just tell the students that I'm going to make the switch because I'll probably be able to explain this better in a language that I'm more familiar with than I'll probably answer your questions in German. And I still do that even now and then when I'm a little intimidated or, when the topic is completely new for me, because having a conversation in German is one thing, but teaching in German is a different thing altogether. So that was one of the biggest challenges, I think, especially when you're standing and you sort of see that you are a little different as in you are a person of color. But I would not say that this in terms of discrimination like this. If I may say, in the time in Germany, I've never felt that, being a person of color has been a bad thing. Okay. In fact, this has never hindered any of my opportunities, I would say. In fact, Germany as a country has been more welcoming and more accepting. At least in my personal experiences, I didn't have to change a thing about myself.
Well, that's interesting that you say that you didn't have to change one thing about yourself. That's a positive.
It's very positive. In fact, I would say that my growth, I'm so grateful that I moved from India to Germany because I feel Germany has really shaped my personality. And definitely helped my
Interesting. But during like the course of your PhD, at any point do you feel like, I want to give up now? Because I know PhD could be a lot. Like, now I can't do this anymore. I think I need to maybe find another route. Yeah, maybe just leave it, get a job. Maybe you had some job offers where you're like, nah, I'm going to finish this PhD instead of taking this job.
Yes, that's often the case with a lot of researchers. I mean, there's just a time when you're sort of doing an experiment where you're just standing in front of whatever you're doing, and then you ask yourself, why am I doing this? Oh, there have been many points where I've felt that, let me just leave this and, walk out of this whatever I'm doing, because there are so many challenges that you face. But I must say how I overcame that whole process. So I had this conversation once with my mother on the phone, and my mother said, you have your keys, right? Go to your boss's office, leave it in front of him, and leave it in front of his table and just walk out. This is what my mom said. She said, fine, just come back. That's what you want to do, right?
She invited you back home.
Yeah, she said, doesn't matter. If that's not something you can do anymore, you're not able to take the pressure, just go leave the keys and walk back. And then, when I had that conversation, that's when I realized that, okay, I've worked too hard, to give it up. Yeah. And I must say that I also had, I have friends who have also done a PhD in different countries. I always had I had the support. So in fact, I had a friend, because we were in different time zones, and if I were to stay back late in the lab, I had a very, she would sometimes, get on a call with me, just to make sure that, I'm fine. And so I had that support from my friends as well. Okay. I had encouragement from from people that cared about me, and that also helped me push through, and that really helped me.
That sounds pretty valuable to get to that really tough phase. So now you are a postdoc. So what are your next steps? Where are you seeing yourself in the next years? What's your plan?
Yes. So I've been in the academic research for about 7-8 years right now. And my learning experience from has been that, to be able to stay in academic research, Germany sort of has a certain criteria that you have to follow. And there are not as many opportunities for everyone because there are not so many positions available. So I had the chance to work with my boss because we were funded by a non-profit organization, which was brilliant. And I also changed my field of research. So right now, my takeaway is that yes, I've definitely learned a lot more in terms of, performing experiments, how to manage, how to supervise students, and, also definitely in terms of making presentations and how things go in terms of paper writing and etc. But my steps from now would be to make, what I've realized for myself is I do love the aspect of staying within the realms of research and development, and I'd like to transition, if I get the opportunity, to stay within R&D, but to make a transition into the industry. And I'm currently in the process of, I've kept 2 doors open for me, that I remain in academia for a while longer, where I can learn a few more methods and increase my expertise in a particular field that is relevant to what the industry is looking for, and of course keep my options also open to just keep applying in the industries and see where it takes me.
But is it so easy to transition?
No, it's not so easy to. It's not so easy to transition from academic research to the industry, because most of the times it's very difficult to translate what your area of research in academia has been to what the needs of the industry are.
Is it based on what you studied or your PhD?
It's based on what I've done.
Okay.
So it's based on the methods I've done so far. So it's not necessarily that what I've done so far can be easily it can be easily translated to what exactly the industry is doing. But I think that's always a give and take, I am trying to learn that, I should be able to convince them that, this is what I've learned so far. The biology of a topic for a researcher who has stayed in academia can transition, but I'm still in that process of figuring it out for myself as to how I can convince them. But I also do believe that right now, as you all know, there's there are so many changes, like especially with AI walking in, and it's very a lot of your job opportunities have shrunk in comparison to what it would have been like, say, 4 or 5 years ago. My learning is also that you have to sort of start upscaling, and you have to see what the industry needs, and you have to keep that learning curve, or you have to keep learning new things, and also sort of and I think with right now in the German market, without certifications, like you say, apart from whatever you've done so far, without certifications, it's a little difficult to sort of make that first breakthrough in.
Without certification, how do you mean certification?
Like, for example, in terms of upscaling your, like, for example, project management. Of course, yes, I have stayed in academic research, and I've done a PhD and a postdoc, which clearly means that I am an excellent project manager. It's just that I might probably not know what Agile and Scrum is. But for me to be able to prove that, hey, I actually do know the terms, I would have to definitely do a certification to show that, hey, I do know what the industrial terms for, like, how the management terms in the industry work, for example.
So how do you feel about this transition? Do you feel it's like a new chapter? Do you feel you can definitely present really well all the competences that you obviously have to the industry and make sure they know what they actually get from you? Or is it also a little bit frustrating?
I think, so from the experiences so far, and at least like in most of, to some of the recruiters that I've been in touch with, They do say that it's all a numbers game. At least they tell me that it is a numbers game.
Okay.
And that for me, sometimes I want to say, okay, that's good to know. Sometimes that is frustrating. But in terms of how I would want to present myself to my next employer, I would definitely say that, that should come with confidence, because I don't at this point feel that I haven't done enough.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of convincing, I think I would go ahead presenting what I've learned so far as a skill that I would like to say that, to my advantage. So I'm not very discouraged by what I've learned so far.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel that yes, it is challenging right now, because the needs are completely different and opportunities are few. But it doesn't want me to. I don't. It doesn't not motivate me not to want to go ahead. And I do feel that, yes, of course, if I were to be within the same, continue pursuing what I'm doing so far, then, there's also a point of saturation that you reach. And for you to grow, you have to be adaptable to change.
Yeah, but I still have this question as regards PhD and all, because I know when you actually study here, you go to the Ausländerbehörde every year or every 2 years to actually extend. But how is it for postdoc? Are they going to give you extension for 4 years? Do you have to bring the block account, or the contract is enough?
That's a very good question, and I think I'm very happy to answer this, because yes, I've been to the Ausländerbehörde many times. So today actually marks the 11th year of my departure from India. I left on the 29th of September, and I should probably even make like a presentation on PowerPoint, writing how many times I've been to the Ausländerbehörde. I must say that yes, some of them, like if you communicate with them in German, they're the nicest, right? And in my case, it was a smooth curve until, say, before COVID just happened. And even after that, in Hamburg, they were quite welcoming. But last year, my biggest takeaway for anyone who's who's sort of pursuing to get a permanent residence in Germany is, please find the right office you have to go to, because I think Hamburg also had a lot of changes in terms of which office you had to go to for the visas, and then they have one particular office for just people who have a higher education, and thankfully they changed that system that anyone who has a master's now should only go to this specific office. So it's called Ausländerbehörde für Fachkräfte, and because I struggled a lot with my visa the whole of last year, even after having lived here for 10 years and also having my whole citizenship process since 2021. There was one person in one of the locations who did not know what she was doing, because I told her, as an academician, I will never have a permanent contract unless I decide to become a professor. And she said, no, I'm sorry, I don't see that you have a PhD, or I do not see that you have a postdoc, but your contract is temporary. So I will not give you a visa unless you have a contract. So that was one of the challenges, but of course now I could get things sorted.
Okay, nice. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, so for anyone who has a master's and above, please go to, I would really recommend them to find out which office they should go to, and this is of course for foreigners with a higher education. They must approach the Ausländerbehörde für Fachkräfte.
So with the new chapter ahead, do you still see yourself in Germany, or do you have plans to go into another European country or even back to India? Because you also mentioned that you guess things changed in the last 10 years. So there might be new opportunities for you as well.
Okay, so I'm going to take a lot of pride in saying this, that I think Germany has become my comfort zone right now. And I would really love to make this transition in the industry first in Germany, and only see how it is afterwards. Once I've sort of made the transition in my comfort zone, and then perhaps once I've gained a little experience, then I might think of another European country. But for now, I don't see myself going back to India to at least for my career endeavors.
Okay, interesting. And thanks for this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
And I wish you well. Next step moving forward.
We're looking forward to it.